And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm really excited to be joined by Michael Sanders. He is a co-founder of Sequence, a project that I have known and have secretly been making reference to for a number of years, and I'm delighted we finally got him on the show. This is going to be a really interesting one. We're going to cover Web3 UX, interoperability, and interesting and exciting business models of white labeling Web3. Michael, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. From meeting Sequence team for the first time, I think in 2021 or 22 at Gamescom, to finally having you guys on the show, I'm delighted we managed to make this happen. Apologies to those listening in. I have a little bit of a throat infection today, so if I'm squeaky or hoarse or going around the place, apologies for that. But really excited to have you here, Michael. I'm really excited for you to share the Sequence story with those people who don't know you so well. As always, guys, this is a LinkedIn Live, so if you have questions for Michael, if you have questions for me, anything around today's show, please do put your comments, put your questions in the chat. I'll do my best to multitask and pick them up as we go along, or we'll try and get to the questions at the end. So without further ado, Michael, for those people who don't know you, could you give us your brief Web3 origin story? How did you find yourself working in this fabulous industry we call Web3?
Yeah, so I first heard of Bitcoin in 2010 as this decentralized money, and I was immediately covered in goosebumps, and I thought, this is the future. And I dove quite deep, sifting through a lot of Reddit forums and just other places on the internet where I could learn more about it, trying to wrap my head around it. It actually took me a while to fully dive in because I was struggling with the concept of transferring thousands of dollars in exchange for a 42-digit alphanumeric sequence that I was then going to write on a piece of paper and bury in my backyard. So it took me a bit. But then in 2014, January of 2014, I met Vitalik Buterin, of course, Ethereum's inventor. And that time I was covered in even bigger goosebumps because he was talking about, decentralized systems and a decentralized programmable internet and programmable money and this concept of the internet of value. And he was speaking very technically, and most of what he said flew over my head, but what I was grokking just filled me with such inspiration. And at the time I said to my friend, I'm like, I think Vitalik's an alien from the future that's here to teach us about technology, economics, and love. I think he was only 18 years old at the time. And from that moment onward, I was pretty obsessed with the Ethereum ecosystem and, what some people have come to call Web3, not that we were using that term back then, but I just saw it as an underpinning for the next generation of the internet. And I spent years thinking about, how can we actually usher in these technologies so that people from around the world will use them and ultimately benefit from them? Because for many years, and even still to this day, crypto is still a bit esoteric, right? And especially back then it was. So I spent years thinking about it. I didn't have that many good ideas, encountered some great people. And then I had the fortune of meeting one of my co-founders, Peter Kieltika, who's our CEO. And he shared with me this vision for the crypto's application layer. And to my knowledge, was also the first person to conceptualize blockchain gaming. And I thought, holy shit, this is it. It's, enabling content that people will use and benefit from without necessarily needing to educate them on the merits of crypto and why it's important. You just give them an experience. So yeah, that's my journey into crypto. It's been about 15 years and it's been a wild ride, and it's amazing to see the momentum that we're currently experiencing in this space, and a long way to go still.
Fabulous. That's a very cool story. You still have all your own hair. I guess for those people listening in on the podcast version, you might not be able to hear that, but that's a good sign. And back in 2014, was that back in you're based in Toronto in Canada right now. So was that the early days of Ethereum in Canada? Did you meet Vitalik elsewhere out in the world? Because back in the day, I did a show on the origins of Web3 in Canada, and a lot of the early Ethereum story is based around Canada and kind of Toronto and some of the major universities. How did you guys actually, were you part of that OG Canada ecosystem back in the day?
I wasn't part of like the OG, I mean.
Okay, there are levels, I get it. But
yeah.
To even have been there at the time, I think is probably quite inspiring.
Yeah, so Vitalik went to university in Waterloo, which is a city about an hour away from Toronto. And I was living in Toronto at the time and still am. And there was this place called Bitcoin Decentral, which was essentially a hacker house meetup place not very big, just like a couple stories of kind of incubating some startups. And Vitalik was there talking to a group of 20 of us in a basement. I didn't really know he was going to be there. I didn't know what Ethereum was. It was just very coincidental. And he gave that talk, and I was just like, holy shit, like what have I stumbled upon? This feels really special. And yeah, as a consequence, Toronto has very much been a hub of Ethereum, even to this day. But now it's more globally distributed. But especially back then, there was a huge concentration of Ethereum advocates and ecosystem participants.
Love that. Canada does not get the respect it deserves for its role in the history of Web3. No blockchain, no Canada, no blockchain. That's that was what I called the episode back in the day, and I still stand by that one. Let's talk about sequence, because as I kind of alluded to at the beginning of the show, I think the sequence story to where you are today is a really nice realization of product market fit, pivoting and progressing something as you get deeper and understand its value. I don't want to foreshadow too much, but could you just tell the audience a little bit about what is sequence, what sits in the stack today, and then specifically the origin story?
Of course. So sequence is developer building blocks for the on-chain era. It's modular crypto infrastructure for blockchains, DeFi, stablecoins, and games. So it really addresses some of the core challenges when it comes to building a crypto application, ranging from solving the wallet problem to one-click cross-chain payments to accessing real-time blockchain data. So it's really this developer platform that accelerates builders and accelerates blockchain ecosystems, and enables flywheels of developers, applications, users, and liquidity flow. And so, we really think about solving kind of three main problems. So one is fragmentation, and we call it the triple fragmentation problem. Chains are fragmented. There are thousands upon thousands of them. Wallets are fragmented, probably thousands of those too. And then there are tokens are fragmented, and there are tens of thousands of tokens. And so that's a big challenge. So we work on solving that. And then there's also developer friction is another big problem. It's just, you got to stitch together all these different tools and figure out what works where and how to enable a great experience for your users. So we provide those developer tools. And then user friction, figuring out if you're a user and it's like, I have this I have this token in this wallet over on X chain, but I want to be buying something or making a DeFi deposit over on a different chain, and it's denominated in USDC, and I don't have that. That's a big issue. So we solve user friction as well. And, the origin story of sequence is, as I mentioned, back in 2017, Peter conceptualized, to my knowledge anyway, blockchain gaming. And so we thought about it, like we knew we wanted to build a developer platform and infrastructure because we were very much focused on accelerating blockchain utility and unifying chains, developers, apps, and users into a seamless ecosystem. So our mission and vision has always been the same. But then determining how to go to market, we thought, like, let's start with a video game, because then we can create an experience that the users, they don't necessarily need to understand the merits of crypto. We don't need to educate them explicitly, but we can give them an experience, a video game where the game items themselves are actually crypto assets, and then they can trade them and do whatever they want with them and own them. And so we started with a game called Skyweaver, which was a trading card game, like a Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. And yeah, and it was a great game, and like it still has a community, people still play it. And that building Skyweaver as a game informed us as to what was necessary for a developer platform like Sequence. And just figuring out, how do you work with blockchain data? How do you abstract away gas so that users aren't faced with a gas fee every time they're trying to make a move and they don't own the gas token, so it just doesn't make sense. It breaks the experience. And then how do you make a wallet that's seamless or allow other wallets to connect? And how do you onboard users? How do you keep them in the game? How do you deal with analytics on chain? All sorts of stuff. And so, yeah, that building that product is what informed us to build Sequence, which then started serving a whole bunch of other game developers and has since expanded into serving application builders of all sorts, including DeFi builders, stablecoin issuers, and protocols, and also serving a lot of blockchains. So a lot of blockchains will leverage our entire stack to accelerate their developer ecosystem.
Love that. A great intro. And the reason I really love this story is because you took it upon yourselves to build, to imagine building something of value through the eyes of an application developer, right? The people that are out there building things for humans are building apps. They're not trying to enable Web3 mass adoption, right? They're trying to build applications that people will use. And you've identified correctly, in my view, the crypto primitives that change things, right? The ability to have digital assets that have value, the ability to have wallets where users control the data or the assets that they hold that can then move from one game to another or one location to another. The ability to have automation, to have transparency of the state of the game at any one time. So you can start building mods and start having things kind of be more modular. The ability to connect with multiple ecosystems, multiple tokens, et cetera, et cetera. These are all useful things. And from my perspective in VeChain and with the Be Better platform that we built, the more primitives that you use, the more differentiated and more meaningful the app is. If you're just creating a distributed ledger, that's fine. You've got a shared database or a shared record, but that's not really adding something that you can't do already outside of established Web2 primitives. And so you guys went the whole hog and say, no, we're going to create something amazing. We're going to play it and run it ourselves. And from that, we're going to identify or we're going to extract the things that we think are valuable for others. Was that, did you start saying we're going to build a game and that's going to spawn sequence? Or did you say we're going to spawn sequence, but to do this properly, we need to build a game?
The latter. We knew we were building the platform as the long-term vision for the business. And we knew that in order to understand what was required in that platform, we had to build a legitimate application. Because back then, there weren't a lot of other application builders in the space because there were no tools to build those applications. So at the start, you actually had to build both. And we did set out to create like an amazing breakthrough game. We were essentially operating as a game studio and a developer infrastructure company. And over time, we just realized, okay, we got to focus everything on the developer infrastructure because being a game studio it's a different skill set. It's a different business.
Very hard business as well, right? It's a super hard business, from the life cycles, the investment choices, and so on. That's tough.
Yeah, and when you're a startup, you need to focus, right? So as much as we love Skyweaver and it still exists, again, it's just not the main focus of the business.
Got you. So you like macro dog fooded your way through into building a SaaS business.
Yeah.
Which again, credit to you guys, because the patience that requires, the commitment and surety that it's going to come out the other end being something that, you know, both the game and the stuff that we build underneath are going to be of value. I'd say it's a big leap of faith. If you back yourselves, you're backing yourselves. But that was still a big move. So, you know, credit to you guys for having that foresight and getting through it.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, man. I'm not sure we really had a choice either, right? Because like I said, I don't think we would have been able to build a great platform had we not gone down the game path. And yeah, I think it's just what needed to be done at that time in the ecosystem. Like things have changed now because now you can just start working with a bunch of other application builders and see what their challenges are and then work on solving them. But back then it was just a lot earlier.
I hear you. Let's take a beat on Web3 gaming while we're here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Because this is an area that I spent a lot of time in when I was working at Polkadot. I spent 6 months building out a sort of strategy and positioning for the direction of Web3 gaming in general, what that meant in terms of the technical primitives required, how different ecosystems had different advantages and so on. And you saw, you know, individual layer one foundations spending tens of millions of dollars to bring games into their ecosystem, right? DeFi Kingdoms to Avalanche, I think, was one. Foundation spending multiple millions of dollars on AAA equivalent games to showcase the technology that they had. Where do you think we are now on Web3 gaming? Do you think it really is a meaningful paradigm? Do you think we're going to see digital assets in gaming become something that sits and stands as a significant part of the gaming industry as we see it today?
Yeah, I do. I think the Web3 gaming market is near a bottom right now, in that there once was a lot of hype surrounding it. It was very easy to raise capital, probably too easy at a particular time. A lot of not so great projects emerged because the money was so easy to come by. And, you see this with almost all new technology where there's an influx, there's a hype cycle, everyone sees a future potential, and then everyone gets there's euphoria. And then as developers are on that journey, they start to realize like, oh, like, yeah, you actually have to, this is a hard journey to go on. And so a lot of the, let's say, not as skilled teams, and oftentimes just less fortunate teams, they didn't catch a break, they didn't get lucky, they ran out of funding, and so a lot of the projects disappear. But then you're left with a smaller group of projects that have found a way to survive or learn and iterate. A lot like the dot-com era, right? There were thousands of companies that went bankrupt, but you still had like Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc. Amazon birthed out of that, and so the cream rises to the top. And I do believe that crypto will play a big role in the future of gaming. Like I think Web3 will be involved in the majority of games in the future. The exact time horizon, hard to predict. We have a lot of awesome games that are building with Sequence, like one that's doing its initial alpha sale today is called Reaper Actual. And the creators of that game were the creators of EverQuest and Star Wars Galaxy, like two of the biggest MMORPGs of all time. The guy John Smedley was the president of Sony Online Entertainment and Amazon Game Studios. So like serious chops, right? And
these are not, Web3 crypto folks who decided to lend their hand to gaming and, building a few little levels here and there.
Exactly. And I think we'll end up seeing success from both those camps, right? Like the folks who really know how to build a great Web2 game migrating over to Web3. And of course, there will be indie startups, net new folks who go into crypto with fresh eyes and figure out, or sort of go into gaming with fresh eyes and figure out like Web3 crypto gaming's moving forward. And, I suspect over time, people aren't going to call it Web3 gaming. It's just going to be, games.
It's gaming,
right?
with or without digital assets, right?
Yeah.
In the same way, finance will be finance with or without digital assets.
Exactly. Like we're not going to call it DeFi and I don't know how many years, 5, 6 years, whatever. It's just going to be finance. And so I think that, yeah, I think crypto is going to play a big role in gaming. And we're very excited about the games that we support. Of course, in addition to the many other verticals we support, like stable coins and DeFi and chains.
So let's get into that. Let's get into the current state of Web3 UX and where you've expanded to, because I could spend the whole show talking about Web3 gaming because I'm passionate about it. I enjoy gaming myself, but that's not all the reason why we're here. Let's talk more broadly about the state of Web3 UX. So you built out of the challenge of issuing digital assets, of wallets, of multi-chain. Where has that gone to since? So what do you think are the challenges that we still have for application builders in Web3 outside of gaming? And where has that taken you in Sequence over the course of that time?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of it is around fragmentation. Because when you think of the Ethereum ecosystem, for example, it originated as one layer, one chain, and then as to scale it, a lot of layer twos and then layer threes and then EVM compatible layer ones were all created, right? So to improve scalability, we ended up creating much more fragmentation. And that is, again, pros and cons, right? You have faster throughput, you have lower transaction fees. But then, like I mentioned earlier, the challenge is you have a user who's on, let's say, Arbitrum, and they have wrapped ETH on Arbitrum, and they're trying to make a DeFi deposit on an application on Polygon. And the Polygon app is or let's just say it's like Polymarket. They're trying to make a prediction bet on Polymarket, and Polymarket's denominated in USDC. And it's like, well, how do I do this as a user? And honestly, it's like if you're new to crypto, it's a research project. Like it's gonna take you, I don't know, like you're gonna bridge, and just a bridge is generally so annoying because it takes
bridging
15
and
minutes.
swapping and looking at fee rates and which bridges do I have, which options do I have, which dexes can I use. At this point in time, people don't have a favorite bridge. They have an app they want to use, and it's like, look, as long as it doesn't cost me $10 per transaction, Just get it done, please.
Exactly. So that's, I'd say, so the fragmentation of chains is a big challenge. And then similarly, wallets, right? Like fragmentation of wallets. Like you might have assets in your MetaMask, and then you have others in your Coinbase wallet, and then you have, there's a Sequence wallet, and then there's there's a Rabby, and there's Rainbow, and I mean, there are thousands. So like, maybe your wallet doesn't connect properly to the application, or you don't have the token you want in that particular wallet. So it's just like, it's very fragmented, right? And then you have this notion of embedded wallets in crypto, right? Like there are universal wallets, which is something like a MetaMask that navigates across all different kinds of applications, but the UX isn't great for especially for onboarding people. Like for new users, it's not good. And then you have embedded wallets, which are those wallets that you might see with like social login, that it's just super seamless, doesn't even feel like a wallet oftentimes, right? And it's embedded into the application, beautiful onboarding. The challenge with those, though, is that each new wallet is siloed from all other wallets. So it's like you're creating a wallet per application, and therefore it has no purchasing power. It has no liquidity in it. So good for onboarding, bad for buying anything, right? So we're very much focused on our ecosystem wallet product, which unifies these two things. It's a universal embedded wallet so that it's seamless, and then it can navigate across all different applications and chains and experiences. And then similarly, like the token fragmentation problem is just, there's thousands upon thousands of tokens, and you might have the wrong token. And so just like you said, you got to figure out swapping, bridging. And so we take care of that with one-click cross-chain transactions, just so, any wallet, any token, any chain. And so it's just like, buy now, Sequence, it just takes care of the rest, right? And so just making the user experience, like a legacy app, like a traditional Web2 experience, which is what users want and what most of the population expects from a user experience. So that's where we see the biggest challenge in crypto, and therefore the biggest opportunity as well.
And obviously the front end of that's the very simple experience, and what you want is the user to feel as little friction as possible, right? It should feel like an app. I log in, I sign in with social, I do my stuff, I get prompts to do the things I want to, or maybe I go into the menu to kind of cash in, cash out, exchange, do whatever I want to do. That's the front end. That's the kind of the obfuscated experience. What's the hard part in the back end? So, what's the stuff where you and the Sequence team are really earning your corn in the background? What are the hard bits of plumbing that you guys are doing to enable that to happen?
So we have a new product coming out that I can't speak in great detail about yet. I can't name it anyway. But it is based on intents and orchestration. And so it's simply making that movement of assets, that one click that I was describing, feasible and invisible to the end user. So that, just like you said, Anthony, it's like in that UI where it's just one click, buy, or deposit, or whatever it is, the action you want to do, and then Sequence takes care of it all behind the scenes. And so once we'll announce the new product in the coming months, and then I'll be sure to reveal it then.
Very cool. A little bit of early alpha for the group. Again, excited that that's possible. The kind of the being able to just make capital flow. I mean, the challenge a lot of times is you're going to see games, or you're going to see native ecosystems want to launch tokens because that's sort of their Kickstarter approach, right? That's how they can get access to funding, access to pre-investment in what it is that they're building, and allows them to go and do stuff. But then over the course of time, the liquidity around that token, the ability for people to trade it, sell it, and so on. We saw lots of Web3 games with walled garden wallets and walled garden tokens. Are we ever going to be able to get around that? Because ultimately you need market makers, or you need some form of access to pricing, liquidity, the ability for those things to have value in the world. And the more niche, or the more unique, or the more specific your game or your ecosystem is, kind of the harder that becomes. And how that's solved today, a lot of it is kind of personal relationship building. A lot of that is individual deal making, pitch decks, all of that kind of grimy foundery stuff that goes on the background that just sucks. It's necessary, but it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that that's something that we can obfuscate away or solve with technology over time?
Yeah. I mean, you still, to your point, you still need liquid markets for particular tokens. You need someone or some technology that wants to buy the other asset on the other side of things, right? So if you look at something like USDC or USDT or ETH, or Pol, or, some of these tokens with like massive liquidity pools, very easy to exchange these and make transactions. If you get down to, the number 3,000 on coin market cap, like less liquidity there, like maybe you sell like $10,000 and it crashes the whole price, right? And the whole market. So, in those scenarios, it is a bit harder to move those assets around, but it's still possible. There's just like, there will be higher slippage or maybe less accessible. And I think, over time, I mean, there's this whole phenomenon of that I think is going to emerge of, tons of institutions, whether it's banks or applications, issuing their own stable coins, because users like stable coins in that they're not volatile. They're very easy to understand, especially if you're not from crypto. It's just like, oh yeah, it's $1. And so I think we're going to see a harmonization because, like, let's say there are tens of thousands of stable coins, right? Like, you still, at one level, you'll have a liquidity issue. It's like, is there enough liquidity for, I don't know, Anthony USD, right? Like, is there enough liquidity for that? And there might not be, but maybe there are mechanisms where that becomes irrelevant and it's just all kind of supported by USDC or USDT under the hood. And then you are able to move those things around and it becomes more of like a branding exercise than it is a true like technology exercise. Like, maybe Anthony USD is actually USDC under the hood and therefore taps into the full liquidity of USDC. So I think there's interesting mechanisms and innovation that will solve that challenge of having too niche of a token, and making it usable alongside technology like we're building that orchestrates the payments.
I mean, at the end of the day, we still need to have markets that matter, and
Yeah.
it's going to be hard for bootstrapping always. But also at the same time, I think the crypto industry has uniquely solved some of those problems over the course of time. The more we can make those market makers automated, the more we can understand and value those tokens and ecosystems. That's only going to get better over time. And I think the nice thing about Web3 and Web3 gaming as it stands from where it was then versus where it is now, we weren't developing in the era of AI back then. And so
Mhm.
the ability to develop at speed, the ability to do price discovery at the speed of AI wasn't there when we were bootstrapping in 2017, 2018. It is there now. And so I think
Mhm.
that's a nice change. Let's talk about interoperability,
Mhm.
and what that means, right? So obviously from the early days, Sequence was looking at EVM ecosystem, anything that relates to Solidity is an easy fix for you. Are you looking beyond EVM today? Is EVM still very much the focus? And what are the barriers we still have to break down?
Yeah, so for us, EVM very much remains the focus just because, well, a number of reasons, right? Like, most on-chain activity occurs in the EVM ecosystem. We're seeing about around 80% of it. And so for us as a company with, we have a certain amount of resources that we need to devote to particular initiatives. And so we focus on EVM because there's a huge opportunity there and there's a lot to unlock. And just like we talked about, there remains fragmentation across the EVM ecosystem because there are so many L2s, L3s, and EVM compatible layer ones as well. And so we're working on making all of those feel like one seamless, cohesive ecosystem. Just like the internet feels like to the average user, right? Like, you can just go into your browser and you can navigate any website and it feels like one seamless ecosystem. That wasn't always the case though. Back in the day, there was like, you could access some websites via an AOL login, but you couldn't access others. And they're kind of like intranets instead of internets. Whereas now navigating the web is super easy. So that's what we're enabling across EVM. And we're also very interested in other ecosystems, like occasionally we do hear demand from Solana, for example. I think Solana maybe has around 10% of like on-chain activity, Web3 activity, whereas the EVM ecosystem has around 80% of it. So I think Solana would be like the next ecosystem we would look at. And it's just a matter of prioritization, right? Like we really want to dial in and solve the EVM fragmentation. And then from there, we'll evaluate the demand and then move into other ecosystems as well.
Got you. And look, while we're here, for those people who may spend less time thinking about the specific data assets, intents, verification, signatures that need to move from one chain to another to enable what should be a simple application experience. What do we mean by interoperability when it comes, specifically in the sequence context, right? Everybody says, oh, UX and interoperability, when we solve those, it'll be fine. It's like, all right, look, a lot of work is already being done. In many cases, we can provide a Web2 application experience, and we have many of the primitives we already need. This is an unfair criticism of the state of play. For you, what are the things that you are enabling interoperability with? What does interoperability mean for you in terms of the things that must happen or the things that we need to fix?
Yeah, so wallets are a big one. Like having a wallet that works everywhere you go. So you can treat it as like your backpack and your credit card and your bank account that you can navigate in today's world. You can navigate virtually any country with a credit card, right? Like you don't need a different credit card in every country that you go into.
Unless you're holding Diners Club or American Express, which may be an analogous example here, right? Which is,
true.
I'm really excited by Diners Club because they give me really great rewards, or I really like the shiny card that I received. But the acceptance is near zero at this point in time, or I don't know, it got merged into something else. I used to remember seeing Diners Club stickers on restaurant doors all the time.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to those guys? But in this case, right, Diners Club is an analogy for less well accepted wallet.
Exactly. Whereas we're going for like the Visa MasterCard, where it works across any country. So you could think of blockchains as different countries, right? And it's like your wallet works across all those different countries or all those different blockchains, just like your credit card works across all those different countries. And I also like the backpack analogy because you won't just have your money there, you'll have all kinds of digital assets, right? Like RWAs, real world assets. You could have entertaining items, like let's say you have video game items, or you have like it could be digital fashion in the metaverse or art or whatever, what have you, or it could be like tokenized equities and stocks in publicly traded companies. You can bring everything with you, and it'll work across applications and across different blockchain ecosystems. So again, it's the analogy of like a web browser. Your Google Chrome, you can navigate the entire internet with it. You don't need to get a different browser to go on different websites. And so wallets are a big one. And then as part of that, it's also about the payments, right? Just being able to pay with any token on any chain using any wallet. So our wallets will allow you to link other wallets to them so that you can have your aggregated liquidity all in one location, because you may want, for whatever reason, it could even just be legacy. You have your MetaMask wallet and you have a ton of assets in it and you like that experience and you don't want to migrate your assets elsewhere. That's fine. You can just link it to the Sequence wallet. You can use our payments infrastructure and it'll just tap into that so that it feels nice and unified. And you can transact with any token from any chain using any wallet. So those are the big interoperability pieces that we think of.
I'm going to say some very unsexy words here, but again, I'm interested in kind of the deep dive behind what sits in what you built from a traditional finance infrastructure. So from your banking infrastructure, from a security perspective, or from a compliance perspective. Do any of those three things manifest regularly in your day-to-day in terms of the things that you guys need to do to enable the seamless experience that you're building? Are you regularly working with traditional financial rails? Is there a burden or an overhead of compliance in enabling what you do? What does that look and feel like for Sequence?
Yeah, so I mean, we're a very compliant company. And we've taken a conservative approach over the years because we never wanted to get into regulatory trouble. Like we just always wanted to, operate properly, and always thinking long term. And then when it comes to, let's say, fiat to crypto or different KYC or KYB, we leverage different partners for all of that. So we don't have money transmitter licenses. We work with partners who have those things. So for us, obviously, we do diligence on all of our partners, but a lot of our partners are like, they're known, and it's not that big of a burden for us. But of course, over the years, we've done all sorts of legal memos and worked with legal teams around the world to understand like what's viable, what's compliant, and what's going to set us up for long-term success and our partners for long-term success, right? Because you don't want one of the clients that's working with you to get into trouble, because that's obviously bad for them and it's bad for you as a business too.
Indeed. And you're going down the traditional fintech route, which is build it modular, understand the different components that you need to build, buy, or partner, and the things that's your core secret sauce, the Web3 stuff, that's you, the stuff where you need more of a kind of regulatory overhead. And again, in 2025, you have many, many more options and many more jurisdictions who are very happy to do the compliance or the KYC stuff that takes away an overhead that you don't need to own yourself, or it's not a competitive advantage for you. And you can make that a module of your service.
Yeah, exactly. And our competitive advantage is our ability to execute on-chain transactions. Moving from like on-ramping or off-ramping, we leverage partners for that because that's their expertise.
Absolutely. Love that. So before we go to questions from the audience, and for those listening in, if you do have questions for myself or Michael, please do put them in the chat right now. Apart from some of the love we're getting in, Diego Borgo, I see you stalking the chat. Pink Beanie Man coming in from wherever he is today. He was out in Ecuador or Costa Rica or something, filming influencer series, but I think he's back home now. Just stream sniping. Good to see you, buddy. But for anyone else who's got questions, please do pop them in the chat now, or any projects or anyone using Sequence, please do shout out the projects that you're building, and really excited to bring this to life a little bit for the people listening in. But the final question to you, Michael, is what more do we need to see wider use of? I wrote here Web3 adoption. What I actually mean is the use of Web3 primitives and applications. Since joining VeChain about 6 months ago, this is the way that I'm framing it, because in reality, Web3 doesn't have a divine right to adoption. And everything that we're trying to do anyway, whether we're using apps, we're using cloud, we're using AI, or we're using blockchain, we're still trying to help people do jobs with technology that people engage with through applications. Typically, we use multiple technologies together. We have front end, we have data, we have digital assets, we have automation, we have inference. In these capabilities, we provide lots of technology together. You don't use a blockchain for all of those things any more than you use an AI for all of those things, or you use a cloud for any of those things. We are multi-technology organizations building apps for people and companies to use. What more do you think it will take to see more applications using Web3 primitives?
A lot of it is time, right? I just think over time, because we are headed in that direction. And I'd say the first is a lot of what we've been talking about. It's continuing to simplify the user experience and the developer experience, because a lot of the UX is actually solved, but not all the developers know about it or know how to integrate it. So then it's about enhancing the developer experience so that developers can build with the tools, that they're easy to use, that they make sense, that they're comprehensive, that they're modular, so that they can compose different things if needed. And then when it comes to the user experience, of course, people shouldn't need to learn about gas fees, bridging, or slippage to buy something, or to even make a deposit into a DeFi vault and to start earning yield, right? Because I think simple DeFi, just like Vitalik wrote a blog post about it, like easy, safe, simple DeFi is crypto's killer application, at least one of them, right? Like people earning yield in a very simple way, but they shouldn't have to do some crazy research project just to figure it out. It should be as simple as back in the day, you could deposit money into savings account and earn a real interest rate. You can't do that anymore, at least not in Canada. But crypto lends you that opportunity. So, simplifying developer experience, improving it, and simplifying the user experience. I think second, this one should go without saying, but of course it's something that every application builder will think about. It's that things need to be secure, things need to be trustworthy and reliable. So that means infrastructure that is non-custodial, secure, and scalable, so people feel confident using it in their daily lives. That's something we take very seriously at Sequence. And then third, which is I think the most critical piece, it's about real world relevance, which is what I think you were most speaking about, Anthony. It's about people having experience where crypto is baked into it, and they don't necessarily need to think about the fact that crypto is baked into it or learn that crypto is baked into it. In the future state, I think crypto could be as boring as cloud infrastructure in many scenarios. It can be super exciting too. There's all sorts of crazy experiences that you can conceptualize with crypto from an entertainment perspective, or even I think prediction markets are a really fascinating, cool experience that's fun and entertaining, right? But it can also be very boring in the same way that cloud infrastructure is. I don't think most people think about the fact that, you know, for the 10,000th picture they're uploading, like how is it being stored? What cloud is it on? Whereas if you told people 15 years ago about cloud computing, they might have thought like, I guess maybe there's a use for that, but like it wouldn't have made sense, just like crypto doesn't make sense to a lot of people today, right? But we will get there. And I just think as like stable coins, as DeFi, as digital marketplaces for RWAs and collectibles and gaming grow, we'll see blockchain become less speculative and just more ubiquitous, part of people's everyday lives.
Love that. A really great way to finish. And I like the way that, you know, you framed it. It's about time. It's about people realizing what they can do with digital asset primitives, about what they can do with digital exchange of value, about what they can do with digital identity, and just wrapping that into an app. If we provide a better feature that makes use of a crypto primitive than not, someone's going to build with it because it's good, because it's useful. As I said before, Web3 has no divine right to adoption any more than any other technology. What we have to do is make it accessible and then help people understand the value, which is what shows like this, what conversations like this are for. So, Michael, really appreciate you jumping in. Thank you so much for dropping a little bit of alpha. Looking forward to the update and the release when it comes out. So thank you so much for that. Shout out to the Sequence team. Delighted we could have made this show 3-4 years after I first heard about you guys. Shout out to the OG Skyweaver community still out there playing, and have fun out there.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Anthony, and thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. See you soon.